Well, Anthony Albanese's pursuit to the Morrison government over surplus JobKeeper payments hit a bit of a snag. It's been revealed a company run by the husband of South Australian Labor Senator Marielle Smith banked more than $20 million worth of JobKeeper subsidies, reporting a $37 million profit last year. It comes as retailer Harvey Norman announced it would pay back more than $6 million it received under the scheme. To discuss this and more, let's bring in my economics panel from Melbourne, business commentator Terry McCrandon, from Sydney, Sky News business editor Ross Greenwood. Terry, I'll come to you if I can on this. They might dance around this legally. They might have been entitled, of course, to these grants. But as far as taxpayers are concerned, there's a moral imperative, isn't there, for business to pay back this money if it's excess?
Well, if I start with the Labor Party exposure, Peter, it's not so much a case of the left hand not knowing what the right hand was doing. It's a case of the left hand in the taxpayer's pocket when the right hand was saying we should get the hand out of pockets. But in the broader question about should they pay it back, JobKeeper was badly designed at the start. It was fundamentally necessary, the actual structure of JobKeeper, actually paying employees when they were being thrown out of work to try and keep them in touch with their businesses. So the concept was right, but it was badly designed, and it allowed all these excessive payments to develop, where companies and as you see with the Labor Party, other organisations as well, to get paid money when they not only weren't they entitled to it, but they had no need for it. They had their businesses running through that June and September quarter last year. So yes, I think that people should pay it back. But at the end of the day, it's really a question of a voluntary decision, because if they were legally entitled to it, it should be voluntary rather than some sort of retrospective clawback.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. There's no doubt they're inside the law, but I don't think they're inside the pub test or the moral requirement, I think, to use taxpayer money sparingly. Let's go to the national accounts. The figures out today. Australia's economy grew by 0.7% over the June quarter, pushing out those fears of a double-dip recession despite 29 days of lockdown throughout this quarter. There'll be a lot more in the next quarter. Household spending, private investment, public expenditure, all up and strong. Ross, what was your read?
So the read is you can understand now why state premiers and the Treasurer, the Prime Minister, are desperate to try and get Australia's economy reopened, and why they're going to be prepared to live with a certain number of COVID cases per day. The reason is that Australia, they don't want to go into recession. December, the quarter that we have just come through, is pretty much going to be a basket case. This September quarter will have been very poor, with many more lockdowns across Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane as well. And so it really is what happens in the December quarter. Now, in the December quarter, as I say, which is pretty much just starting now, it's a case of how long is it between now and December 31 that Australia is closed down. For the longer it goes on, the more likely it is that we have two quarters where the economy contracts, and therefore the technical term of recession. The government doesn't want that. Even the state governments don't want that, because it's costing jobs. And so this is the reason for the call. So these numbers were in themselves pretty good. In fact, probably better than many expected. But as I say, the economy needs to open, and open pretty quickly.
Yeah, just on that though, Ross, in that December quarter, you've obviously got all the retail spending we normally have. We have the travel around the country, the tourism and the travel sector, usually strong in and around Christmas. Now, we know there's no certainty. People are reluctant to book and lose their fares. And we know a lot of businesses are saying they don't even know if they're going to be open come Christmas. They're not bringing in stock. We know those lead times coming out from overseas are pretty tough. How do you make that quarter a positive quarter when you've got all this uncertainty?
When you open up, and the reason is because what you've just seen is the largest annual economic bounce since the numbers were taken in 1959. And so as soon as things open, people will start spending. People are now dipping further into their savings to spend as well. And just one final thing, if there aren't enough problems going on, Australia Post this afternoon has said, even though it's got Christmas-like volumes right now, it's now going to, from Saturday until Tuesday next week, basically tell retailers to stop sending us parcels. We can't cope with them because of coronavirus outbreaks in its key distribution centres. So there's another thing to add onto the pile of other bits and pieces going wrong right now in the economy.
Goodness me. Let's go to New South Wales, Terry. The Treasurer there, Dominic Perrottet, has announced a payroll tax cut for business with turnovers under $10 million. This is all about helping them to recover from COVID. But of course, very different story in Victoria. They're loading on additional payroll taxes.
Well, what's happening in New South Wales is nice, but it's such a minor thing in terms of the total reality of the business environment in New South Wales and in Victoria. And obviously, Victoria should emulate what's happening in New South Wales. But the bottom line, as long as Ross and you've said, as long as we have premiers ordering businesses not to be able to function, ordering businesses to be destroyed, things like lower taxes on employment which doesn't exist is meaningless. I mean, obviously, if you don't have any employees, a cutting payroll tax does nothing for you, and it does nothing for those employees.
Yeah, just quickly though, Terry, I mean, the decision by Palace, the Victorian Treasurer, in the middle of the year to go hard on basically lifting business taxes, worst possible time, and obviously now we're in lockdown, pressure should be on him to rescind those taxes, shouldn't it?
Well, exactly, Peter. But, we have precious hope that would actually occur. I mean, the Premier today has promised another relief package, but that's really patching over very grievous wounds that are being suffered across the business sector. And ultimately, it's not just about business, it's about people. It's either people who are owners of businesses or people who work in businesses. And the reality is that, as Ross indicated, and as you've indicated, unless we can have certainty that we can go into that critical December period where all those holidays take place, where the Christmas spending takes place, we will be in deep, deep trouble.
Well, gentlemen, I'm sure the problems will still be there next week. Look forward to your company again. Ross Greenwood, Terry McCrann.